Good morning, World History class. This is Mr. Shao. We are going to be looking at absolutism and forms of government, as well as talking about how that all relates to the idea of the Enlightenment. All right, so for our hyperdoc, we will be looking at certain articles, and you're going to need your Impact World History book, and that is very important. We're going to be going through a couple of chapters, so make sure that you have the correct page numbers and that you are looking at how to answer each of the questions that follow. So right here below, we are going to talk about the responsibility of government. So looking at the world issues that we talked about in chapter 17, what is the government responsibility to its people? And back in ancient times, where most governments were only one type, and that was kings and queens, how is that important to us today? So looking at responsibility of the government, how did this all change from absolutism to what we call democracy today? So when we look at some of these important questions, we have to think about first, how did the ideas of government change? What led to changes in absolutism and the rise of new forms of government, such as democracies, representative democracies, communisms, oligarchies, and so on? Finally, how did the Enlightenment change views on government? And so we're going to be talking about the Enlightenment at the second part of this hyperdoc, and you're going to be needing pages 62 to about 81. And then in chapter 3, it's going to be pages 88 to about 116. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the maps here. So here we are always going to start with a map, and this map is actually talking about absolutism. So this is Europe in the 1650s, and these are kingdoms divided by different, what we know as countries today, but back then they were only kingdoms ruled by a monarch or by a group of kingdoms. So you have the map key here, and the pages. The map is also on pages 52 to 53. So if you want to look at it kind of very closely, or if you don't want to enlarge this, go ahead and go to page 52 to 53, and then you can answer the questions from there. All right, so we're going to go to pages 62 to 66, talk about the War and Revolution in England. And this series of events over the course of maybe a century really actually made a difference in what we know as democracy today. And so we're going to be looking at what parliament is. So look for the identified vocabulary. It's always going to ask you about certain vocabulary, and parliament is an important vocabulary word that you should know. If you don't, Google or check the book or use a glossary in the book, but you need to identify the vocabulary. So look for those kind of questions when they just ask you to identify vocabulary. All right, so the next part is going to talk about two very important thinkers. These were writers, but they were also philosophers. Okay, what that means is scholars, or they were very intellectual. They were very, I guess, wise people of the age, and many readers and many of the people of that time looked to them to kind of help their ideas. And if you look at what they actually fought for, what ideas they actually brought up, you'll recognize them. So you might not actually know who these people are, but you'll know what ideas they gave. So the two ideas that Thomas Hobbes and John Locke gave was the social contract, which is actually in small print on one of the pages, and John Locke, who talked about natural rights. Okay, so the next part on page 80 to 81 is going to be looking at primary sources. So you're going to be preparing writing and sourcing three different writing pieces. Okay, these were the writings that came from that time period. This one was written by Thomas Hobbes. This one was written by John Locke. And finally, this one was written by Thomas Jefferson, with help from, of course, Benjamin Franklin. And that is the Declaration of Independence. So when we look at these three items, think about the connections and think about how that connects to today. Because when we think about the practice of our rights, where did it first come from? And why do we still hold on to it today. Those are the important things for you. So from there, we're going to actually talk about the Age of Enlightenment. Locke and Hobbes were really important in helping generate ideas for the Age of Enlightenment. The Enlightenment wasn't just ideas, it was also science. And so we have a video here that actually talks about the difference and actually explains to you what the Enlightenment really is. And that's actually one of the first questions. So go ahead and watch that video. It's short and it's actually a very quick explanation with little doodles and pictures that help. The next part is going to be from pages 96 to 104, and it's going to reflect on all of the different Enlightenment speakers, some of the ideas that came from it, especially the idea of the representative government. And so think about what our government is. Is it a democracy or is it a representative democracy? And there is a difference. So watch the video, even read the short little clip on page 102 to kind of help you understand the ideas. And then you're going to answer 2 questions about representative government. Okay? We're going to talk about more enlightened thinkers, and then we're talking about another identified vocabulary, which is the vocabulary word of salon, not the one that you go to do your heroin. Okay, so when you look up salon, it's going to be the salons of the Enlightenment page, not the ones that we currently go to now. I mean, you don't get this, great hair just by, you got to go to, well, not that kind of stuff. Anyways, last question, question number 27, is going to be a reflection of what we discussed and what you learned from this week, as well as thinking about connections. So this one is a tough question, but it's also your opinion. So you got to think about what we know of today, about our government of today. And it could be the US government, it could be governments of other countries. But based on what you know about the world issues and how things are going on today, do you believe the governments of the world are still holding true, or still using and practicing ideals from the Enlightenment speakers? And think about if the rights that we have today are still connected and well supported by the ideas of the Enlightenment times. So that is actually a big question. But think about how you feel. Can we still practice the unalienable rights that Locke talks about? Is there a social contract that the government of the world owe with people? And so those are the big ideas that we're going to be discussing. And hopefully you will be able to find enough information to help you answer those. All right, if you have questions or if you want to discuss these very big philosophical thoughts, go ahead and Ms. Orteg for help. All right, guys, thank you for your time.